Gwendolyn Stacy, Earth-65. History. Spider-Gwen. Gwen Stacy was born in Forest Hills to George and Helen Stacy. Following her mother's death, she was raised by George alone. Gwen's free spirit and artistic inclinations often put her at odds with the type of ethics her father worked to instill. As a result of this contrast with her father, Gwen would often retreat into quiet seclusion and play the drums. Over time, she developed a friendship with her neighbor and fellow introvert Peter Parker, sharing their love for music. At Midtown High School, Gwen developed relationships with other students, a group of girls with whom she formed the band, the Mary Janes, and rebellious affluent student Harry Osborne. After being bitten by a genetically engineered spider, Gwen was granted arachnid-like superpowers, and started a career as a crime fighter, dubbed by the media as Spider-Woman. She was given a costume and a set of web shooters by retired crime fighter Janet Van Dyne. Gwen spent most of her early adventures focused on exploiting and maintaining her newfound attention more than helping those in need. However, Gwen's behavior changed after her father expressed he believed Spider-Woman could easily help people. Spider-Woman's influence also caused one of the biggest tragedies in Gwen's life. The bullied Peter Parker, desperate to be special like his idol Spider-Woman, conducted an experiment that turned him into a lizard-like creature. Parker crashed the Midtown Senior Prom, where Gwen fought him. Despite his pleas for de-escalation, Gwen did not pull any punches. Following Gwen's beatdown, Peter returned to his human form but, due to the injuries sustained at Gwen's attacks, he died. With no evidence or link to his transformation, Spider-Woman was blamed by the media for Peter's death and branded a criminal. Haunted by Peter's death, Gwen doubled her efforts to fight crime to redeem herself. Additionally, Gwen's father George was tasked with conducting the NYPD investigation to capture Spider-Woman. This drew the attention of Matt Murdock, a corrupt lawyer, leader of the Hand Ninja, and the right hand and successor to New York's kingpin of crime who sent hitman Alexei Sitsovic to kill George in an attempt to make an ally of Spider-Woman. After thwarting the murder attempt, Gwen found herself held at gunpoint by her father, and she was forced to reveal her double identity. She pleaded her innocence, and swore to never rest until criminals like the kingpin were stopped. Captain Stacy told her to leave the scene before he changed his mind. Spider-Verse. Gwen was one of the first spider totems to join Spider UK's Spider Army in order to combat the Inheritors during the Great Hunt. She was sent to Earth-21205 to recruit the spider totem of that reality, a Peter Parker who was driven to madness and grief caused by the death of the Gwen of that reality and became the Goblin. However, that Peter was killed by Verna and her hounds. Angered, Gwen swore vengeance and warped away from that reality. Spider-Woman was later present during the final fight against the Inheritors, during which the villains were finally defeated and dealt with. Return to her universe. Gwen later returned to her reality, where she still tried to turn the public opinion against her by becoming a vigilante. With the appearance of a new villain named the Vulture, Gwen set out to catch him and deliver him to the police in order to gain their trust. However, her vigilantism strained her friendship with Mary Jane Watson and the other members of her band, as well as with her father. After her first fight with the Vulture ended in a humiliating defeat, Gwen learned that her father had lost jurisdiction of the manhunt for her, which had been reassigned to Frank Castle, a maverick police officer known for his brutal measures. An argument with her father was interrupted by the Vulture, who had been sent to find Spider-Woman by Murdock. Incapacitated by the Vulture's gas fumes, she was attacked by Castle, who managed to unmask her and was shocked to discover she was just a teenaged girl. When a gig the Mary Janes was headlining was attacked by the Hand, Spider-Gwen broke up a fight between Black Cat and Murdock, who had taken a keen interest in making Spider-Woman his apprentice and figured out her civilian identity by watching her fight and targeting her family. Secret Wars. With the destruction of the universe, an amnesiac Gwen found herself on Earth-15513 under the assumed alias of Ms. Woodley, an employee of Oscorp. Teaming up with the Peter Porker of Earth-8311, the Anya Corzone of Earth-616, the William Braddock of Earth-833, the Patrick Prabhakar of Earth-50101, and the Peter Parker of Earth-90214, Gwen managed to overthrow Mayor Norman Osborn and stop him from hijacking control of the Web of Life and Destiny. Following the restoration of the multiverse, Gwen became a part-time member of the Web Warriors, helping to protect dimensions that had lost their spider totems to the Inheritors. Return of the Lizard. Waking up late for her new job at the Dollar Dog Bodega, Gwen arrived to learn it had been attacked first by the Bodega Bandit, a small-time criminal stylizing himself after 18th-century highwayman, and then by a giant lizard monster. Hunting down the Bodega Bandit, she learned that the lizard had eaten his dog. Unwilling to believe the lizard had come back, Gwen realized the culprit was Dr. Curtis Connors, the only other person aware that Peter had been the original lizard, but that Connors had vanished after Peter's death. Haunted by her failure to save Peter, Spider-Woman located the lizard in the sewers only to discover Connors was one of many. Her fight with the lizards was interrupted by Captain America, who informed her the monsters were property of S.H.I.E.L.D. and that she was placing her under arrest. Despite not wanting to fight Captain America, who her father idolized, Gwen was forced into a three-way battle between her and the lizards and was knocked out. Waking up handcuffed with vibranium, Gwen was interrogated by Captain America, who accused her of being a member of the terrorist organization SALK. Noticing Dr. Connors and the other lizards reverted to human form, Spider-Woman asked if Captain America had a cure, but was told that only a temporary suppressant existed. Devastated that this was going to be Peter's legacy, Gwen told Captain America that Peter had been the lizard that attacked Midtown and that she didn't have a clue what SALK was. Connors transformed back into a lizard and attacked, but Gwen defeated him with help from Captain America and Jean DeWolf, a police friend of her father's. Deciding to give her a chance to prove her innocence, Captain America let Spider-Woman go, and Gwen later gave the bodega bandit her pet hamster to replace his dog. Attack of the Green Goblin. Visiting the Spider-Woman of Earth-616 using her Web Warrior's portal device for advice and to help free her from the vibranium handcuffs, Gwen asked her what her Earth-616 counterpart was like. Saying she should talk to Peter Parker, having never personally met Gwen Stacy herself, Jessica advised her to focus on being the best Gwen Stacy she can be rather than dwelling on what happened to Earth-616 Gwen and Earth-65 Peter. With Jess distracted by her pregnancy-induced hunger cravings, Gwen returned to Earth-65 and was shocked to discover Harry Osborn, a high school friend of hers and Peter's, has returned after 2 years, having vanished after Peter's funeral. Gwen was further shocked to learn that Harry blamed himself for Peter's death, having done nothing to stop Spider-Woman from killing one of his two best friends, and that he had spent his 2 years training as a soldier and joined S.H.I.E.L.D., later defecting to SALK in order to take revenge. Hunted by Harry as Spider-Woman, Gwen offered to surrender peacefully, but Harry, dressed in Green Goblin-themed powered armor and accompanied by Orange and Blue Goblin androids, declares he's going to kill her. Gwen tried to talk Harry down, but he drank an improved batch of lizard serum in order to gain an edge over her, knocked her out, and unmasked her, the shock of learning her identity causing him to lose control of the lizard mutagen. Regaining consciousness to see Captain America fighting the increasingly monstrous Harry, Gwen followed Harry into the sewers after Captain America was knocked out by a pumpkin bomb explosion and managed to talk him down, giving him the lizard serum suppressant in order to reverse his mutation. Returning home, Gwen offered to tell her father the truth about how Peter died, but Captain Stacy told he'd retired from the Force and for her to keep her secrets. Spider-Women. While meeting with Earth-616 Spider-Woman and Silk on Earth-65, the three were attacked by the Super Adaptoid, discovering this was merely a distraction for someone to steal Gwen's portal device and strand them on Earth-65. While Jessica told Gwen to live her life and hang out with her friends, Gwen instead followed her and saved her and Reed Richards from being ambushed by SALK agents. Discovering that the leader of SALK was Cindy Moon's Earth-65 counterpart, with Richards' help they managed to build a portal to Earth-616. Silk and Spider-Woman managed to track Cindy-65 to Parker Industries, but were ambushed by her. With Spider-Woman and Silk outclassed by her stolen tech, Cindy-65 revealed that she had created the spider that gave Gwen her powers, derived from the genetic material of an extraterrestrial arachnid. Incapacitating Gwen, Cindy-65 injects her with a formula that removes her spider powers. Returning to the Fact Channel, Gwen learned of the origin story of Jesse Drew and informed him of Cindy-65's deception. Jesse defected from SALK and provided Gwen with radioactive isotopes derived from the DNA of the alien spiders that had bitten him, enabling her to temporarily restore her powers. Hunted by the Punisher. After enduring a brutal beat down in her powerless state from Cindy-65, Gwen realized how helpless she was without her powers. Despite Captain America's support and her father issuing a public confession of how poorly the Spider-Woman investigation was handled, Gwen became depressed at the prospect of permanently losing her powers once her 8 isotopes were used up. However, being powerless gave her an opportunity to reconnect with her friends. When discovered that Mr. Albie, her boss, had been forced to sell the dollar dog, which had been rebuilt from a bodega into a high-priced restaurant to pay off the repairs from her fight with the Green Goblin, Gwen almost gave up being Spider-Woman forever but was stopped by the arrival of Frank Castle, who'd figured out she was Spider-Woman and attacked her. Gwen used one of the isotopes to knock him out and flee the scene. Gwen tried to ask her father for advice, but they were attacked by Kraven the Hunter, an associate of Castle's from when he was a member of Tony Stark's War Machine mercenaries. While the isotope injector was damaged by Kraven, George Stacy stopped Castle from exposing Gwen as Spider-Woman. Gwen sought advice from Jesse Drew, who told her to take her father and run, and considered seeking refuge on Earth-616 or help from her various allies, even contemplating becoming Murdoch's apprentice if it would protect her father. After receiving an inspirational speech from the bodega bandit who she had stopped from robbing a burger joint while out of costume, Gwen resolved to fight and had Reed Richards repair the injector, using the last of the isotopes to fight Castle. The fight between the two caused massive amounts of collateral damage, but George Stacy and Jean DeWolf arrived in time to stop him from killing Gwen with his War Machine gauntlet. With Gwen despairing over her inability to break the cycle of violence ruining their lives, George decided to turn himself in for aiding and abetting Spider-Woman. Deal with the devil. When Matt Murdock approached her and offered to help her in exchange for Spider-Woman's fealty, and Gwen's help in persuading her father to work with Murdock, Gwen accepted, desperate to get legal representation for Captain Stacy. Gwen was given new hope when Jessica Drew and her babysitter stopped by for Thanksgiving. On Christmas Eve, Spider-Woman was attacked by the Hand Ninja as a test of her skills, Murdock revealing he knew all about her power loss and offering her an unlimited supply of isotope samples. Gwen accepts, making Murdock Gwen's only hope for being Spider-Woman. Meeting Miles Morales. When Miles Morales' father vanished from Earth-616 and was found on Earth-65, Gwen teamed up with him and discovered that Jefferson Davis's Earth-65 counterpart was SILK field agent known as the Scorpion. Coming across an alternate future world where they were married and had children, Gwen and Miles formed a romantic connection but were forced to part ways. Venomized. With the revelation that corrupt District Attorney Foggy Nelson had moved her father's trial date up, Gwen's life began to increasingly spiral out of control as her father refused to refute the charges against him, not caring that being found guilty would result in him being sent to prison and wanting to use the trial to reveal Spider-Woman's innocence. Vowing to do whatever it took to save her father, Gwen met with Murdock at Oscorp, where he and scientist Dr. Elsa Brock revealed a way Gwen could both permanently regain her powers and cure Harry Osborn, exposing someone mutated by the lizard serum to the radioactive spider isotopes, both related through Cindy 65's research, would draw the mutagen out, transforming it into a black, amorphous symbiotic creature, described as a mutant cousin of Agent Drew's original alien parasite and a hybrid, with all of the abilities of Spider-Woman plus the regenerative power of the lizard. Agreeing to Murdock's plan for the sake of helping Harry, Gwen traveled to Madripoor with a squad of Hand Ninja. Gwen's meeting with Harry was interrupted by the arrival of Logan and Shadowcat, a pair of ruthless bounty hunters sent by S.H.I.E.L.D. to capture Harry. Harry convinced Gwen to renege on her agreement with Murdock, and she turned on the Hand Ninja sent to assist her. Growing increasingly desperate as Harry's condition degenerated, Gwen called Murdock, who berated her for going back on their deal, but she refused to take Harry to the Hand, realizing that she'd unwittingly fallen into Murdock's trap. When Harry fully transformed into the lizard, Gwen teamed up with Shadowcat and Logan, using her isotopes to turn the lizard serum in Harry's veins into venom. The symbiote first bonded with Logan, whose healing factor made him immune to the radiation. Gwen and Shadowcat were able to work together to phase and separate him from venom. The symbiote subsequently bonded to Gwen, but, when Murdock arrived to gloat, Gwen stole his smartphone and played music in order to keep it under control. When she attacked him, Murdock revealed he'd stolen her portal device and revealed that her prolonged disappearance had let the Rhino beat her father into a coma. Enraged, Gwen gave in to the symbiote and swore revenge. Hunting down the Rhino as Venom, Gwen became increasingly aggressive and violent as the symbiote's influence over her grew. Otomo, Murdock's second-in-command, informed her of the Rhino's location, and Gwenom confronted him and Murdock, swearing to come for the Kingpin after she was done with the man who hurt her father. As she fought the Rhino, Gwen noticed police officers filming her and realized that it was a setup to discredit her father and reaffirm the notion that she was a criminal, but her desire for vengeance outweighed any misgivings over her actions, so Gwen kept fighting. Before Gwenom could strike a finishing blow on the Rhino, the Punisher intervened and separated her from the symbiote using a sonic baton before killing the Rhino himself using his War Machine gauntlet. Enraged that her vengeance was stolen from her, Gwen rebonded to the symbiote and was subsequently framed for the Rhino's murder, renewing the manhunt against her. After brutally attacking and nearly killing the Bodega Bandit, Gwen solicited Reed Richards' help in infiltrating S.H.I.E.L.D.'s maximum security prison to ask Cindy Moon for her help with controlling Venom and to confront her over why she'd set the mutant spider that had bitten her loose. Cindy revealed that despite wanting power more than anything, she hadn't used the mutant spider on herself out of fear of failure. Cindy reveals that Gwen's dark thoughts, anger, and thus her quest for vengeance, are not the result of Venom but were her own. Cindy challenged Gwen to let go of her rage and hatred towards Murdock, saying that seeking revenge would only play into his hands. However, Gwen's determination to take the Kingpin down was only renewed after seeing that Felicia Hardy had been thrown into S.H.I.E.L.D.'s maximum security prison as a result of her attack on Murdock, the former Black Cat, despairing that Murdock had won and anyone and anything not already under his control soon would be. Hunting down the corrupt cop responsible for letting the Rhino into her father's cell, Venom was about to kill him but was confronted by the Punisher. Rejecting his offer of an alliance to take down Murdock, she offered the cop a chance to redeem himself by turning himself in, and later approached Ben Parker and unmasked herself. Gwen would soon reveal her dual identities to May and the Mary Janes as well, professing her guilt in hiding her life from Spider-Woman from them for so long. Gwen's bandmates were shaken yet supportive, but Ben emboldened Gwen to continue on with her plan of vengeance against Murdoch. As MJ, Betty, and Glory were berating Ben, Castle contacted Gwen, who then snuck out in the midst of the fight. Gwen zipped onto the roof of Murdoch's building, where a bloody, disheveled Castle was aiming his war machine gauntlet towards Murdoch. Gwen threw Murdoch into the air with a webline, causing Castle to miss, but as Castle fired another blast while Gwen belittled him for descending into violence, Captain America rushed in and disarmed and incapacitated Castle. Cap attempted to console Gwen, promising Gwen that Murdoch will see justice. Recalling her own experiences with the police, as well as Murdoch's sway over the courts and justice system, Gwen turns on Cap, rallying that Murdoch owns both sides of the law. He is your justice. Gwen overpowers Cap, breaks her arm, and knocks her out. Gwen dangled Murdoch over the edge of the building, prepared to kill him, but when Murdoch finally revealed his obsession with her, a long test to see whether or not she can be corrupted by power, just like he was, Gwen could no longer go through with killing him. As Murdoch taunted Gwen, her teleportation device worn by Murdoch on his wrist began beeping insistently before a portal opened from it and sucked Gwen into an alternate dimension, her presence giving rise to a new timeline called Earth-65. Gwen almost immediately encountered the Gwen Stacy of that reality, who initially presumed Gwen-65 to be a clone. Frustrated with the overwhelming time pressure, and not wanting to deal with Gwen-617's problems, Gwen walked out on her counterpart, but not before Gwen-617 heard Gwen referring to herself as we. Upon learning that Gwen-617's father had been killed and seeing how she was coping with her loss, Gwen-65 came to the realization that at least her own father was still alive and that she should have stayed with him instead of giving into her rage. Gwen-617 used Empire State University's supercomputer to locate a weak spot between dimensions, taking Gwen-65 to the Avengers Manor to get it checked by Tony Stark and Hank Pym. Using a device engineered by Stark, the two Gwens located a weak spot near the George Washington Bridge, Gwen-65 noting the irony. Saying farewell, Gwen-65 promised to Gwen-617 that she'd never forget how lucky she was to still have her father, and leapt off the bridge to return home. The Trial of Spider-Gwen. After returning to Earth-65, Gwen approached J. Jonah Jameson and revealed the truth to him, unmasking herself. Contacting her friends, Gwen reveals to them how when she inputs anger, fear, and pain into venom it becomes too much and it's like a dam bursts. Gwen concludes that if the venom gives me back 10 times what I put in, maybe it's time I think more about what I give. With the help of Reed Richards and the Mary Janes, Gwen forms a plan to take down Murdoch and take back her webwatch. Confronting Murdoch, who had been deemed a liability by the Hand, using a band recording of the Mary Janes, played through technology adapted by Reed. The sound crippled Murdoch while it strongly affected the Venom symbiote. Gwen declared herself free of his machinations, achieving a balance with Venom which transformed into a replica of her old costume. Retrieving her dimensional portal watch, she left him to face the Hand by himself when he rejected her offer of redemption. Meeting with Detective Jean DeWolf, Gwen allowed herself to be arrested, desiring to atone for her crimes. Gwen was assigned Jennifer Walters as an attorney, being told that she wasn't on trial for anything she had done but everything Spider-Woman could do. Despite the efforts of DA Foggy Nelson to get the case thrown out, Gwen was convicted by the jury and sentenced to 1 year in a maximum security shield prison. Despairing that her sentence had been so lenient despite all the damage she'd caused, Gwen allowed herself to be brutally beaten up by the other inmates and psychologically tormented by the Vulture, who had established himself at the top of the prison's hierarchy. Gwen rejected an offer by Captain America to let her out of prison if she joined a Black Ops team consisting of potential assets like Black Cat, Silk, Kitty Pryde, Logan, and the Punisher, stating she needed to be held fully accountable for her actions as Spider-Woman. After a year in prison, Gwen was released and reunited with the Mary Janes, initially vetoing Betty Brant's suggestion that the band go on tour and use that as an excuse for Spider-Gwen to help people in places outside New York. Learning that her father had awakened from his coma and was undergoing rehab, Gwen and George discussed their respective second chances while en route to the Dollar Dog, Gwen telling her father that what had happened to her wasn't his fault and that she wanted to find a way of helping people that didn't involve violence, and George assuring her that no matter what the future held in store for them he had her back. When a fire truck went past the diner, Gwen bid her father farewell and left to assist the firefighters in evacuating a burning apartment building. Spider-Geddon. When the superior octopus used the cloning technology of the inheritors and merged with the Nuyu technology in order to make himself immortal, the Web Warriors decided to reassemble the Spider Army in order to stop him, fearing the inheritors would hack it and return. Because they were sending Spider-Bots, their fears would prove to be true, as they would have the technology to do it. Before that, Spider-Gwen was approached by Spider-Ham and she joined with the rest of the Spider Army, who lastly recruited Miles Morales. When they arrived at Otto's lair, it was already too late, and she witnessed as the Spider-Noir killed himself and Spider-UK's life energy was absorbed by the inheritors. Verna then got her hands on Gwen's dimensional travel watch and sent her to another dimension. There she met an alternate version of herself who became that world's Green Goblin. Peter and Mary Jane explained what happened and that Harry Osborn was that world's Spider-Man. It's also revealed that world's Gwen Stacy was working on a project to make Harry travel between dimensions with his spider powers, showing she could help Spider-Gwen return to her friends. In the end, the Goblin was cured of her insanity and helped develop the ticket to the multiverse, which would allow her counterpart to travel through the multiverse. Instead of just going straight back to San Francisco, Gwen decided to recruit as many spider totems as she could, including the mainstream Spider-Man. She arrived at the Transamerica Pyramid just in time to see Miles, now with the power of the Enigma Force, fight with the now-revived father of the Inheritors, Solus. Peter commanded the Spider Army to obey Otto's orders, which meant Miles killing Solus with the sword Vigor. After he was slain and the rest defeated, they created new clone baby bodies to the Inheritors, without their memory and free of their hunger, whom were adopted by Spider-Mayhem. With the web of life and destiny now destroyed, Gwen was the only one who could travel through the multiverse. Gwen would later venture to Earth 90214 and Earth 803 to inform of Spider-Noir and Spider-UK's deaths to their relatives and friends. Personality. Gwen is a free-spirited individual with artistic inclinations, traits of which would put her at odds with the types of ethics her father tried to instill. She has an interest in music, hence her role as a drummer in the Mary Janes, and a love for corn dogs. Like her father, Gwen possesses a strong sense of justice and is a natural detective, both of which catered well to her decision to become a superhero after receiving her powers. In her earlier adventures, Gwen relished in the attention as Spider-Woman, opting to exploit and maintain it rather than use her abilities altruistically. However, her behavior changed when her father expressed his belief that Spider-Woman could easily help people. After Peter Parker, who had mutated into the Lizard, died in a fight against her, Gwen harbored an immense amount of guilt, and her being blamed by the public for his death only served to worsen it greatly. Regardless, she had a strong enough will to continue being Spider-Woman, no matter how much enmity much of the world had for her. Unfortunately, Gwen's protective nature has given way to desperation and vengeance at times, as she had been prompted her to commit terrible actions, or at least consider them. Most notably her response to her powers diminishing and the mounting charges against her father, when she entered a deal with the Matt Murdock of her dimension, which led to a series of disastrous events, including her union with the symbiote and her intentions to kill Murdock for his transgressions. At the end of the day, Gwen is willing to take responsibility for her actions and recklessness. This is shown after she spared Murdock, in which she revealed her identity and turned herself into the authorities, as well as accepting her conviction and a 1-year sentencing to a shield prison. She even declined Captain America's offer to join a task force as recompense for her sentencing, opting to carry out her sentence and endure the abuses she faced in prison. After her release from prison, Gwen had struggled to balance her civilian and superhero lives. She realized it was foolish of her to expect to return to a normal life, and lamented the fact that she no longer had a secret identity, but struggled onward as best she could. Upon realizing she could carry out a normal life in the Prime Marvel universe, she decided to enroll in the ESU located there and came to enjoy the lifestyle split between there and her own dimension. When coming to terms with her present circumstances, she decided to rebrand her superhero identity after something Miles Morales had said to her when he first saw she had survived their latest encounter with the Inheritors, Ghost Spider, believing that death follows her. After bonding with the symbiote, Gwen initially regretted becoming host to it. Noticing that since bonding with it, she became much more aggressive and violent. She had also become wary of its behavior, such as dispensing gummy spiders she is not controlling, the frequent headaches, and occasional blackouts. However, she also acknowledges that it is a living creature that is her responsibility, and she has taken it upon herself to show it a better path alternative to the more destructive nature it's inclined to. Reputation. Initially, Gwen's reputation as Spider-Woman was favorable. However, after Peter Parker died fighting her as the Lizard, the public largely blamed her for his death, and the NYPD and S.H.I.E.L.D. sought her capture. In the NYPD, some had even considered Spider-Woman to be more of a dangerous animal to be put down than a criminal. Unsurprisingly, the John Jonah Jameson of her dimension had largely opposed her and branded her a menace, which had pedigree due to the concurrent warrant for her arrest. After revealing her identity and finishing her prison sentence, the public's reception of her had improved considerably, with J.J. Jameson even publicly welcoming her back to the city on television, though it was most likely to improve his own reputation. As of now, she is currently able to work closely with most forms of authority in New York, particularly the NYPD, as the officers now know of her relations to Captain Stacy. However, some people still harbor resentment towards her, as shown when told to leave a restaurant when on a date with Harry, and Gwen herself struggled to deal with the attention she was getting. Ultimately, Gwen later decides to go to Earth-616 to attend the ESU located there. As the newly dubbed Ghost Spider, she was received warmly there as a partner of Spider-Man, but at the same time, the public does not know her identity. Attributes. Powers. Gwen lost her powers as a result of Cindy Moon depowering her with her power glove, but exhibits similar capabilities as a result of having bonded to the Venom symbiote. Abilities. Skilled detective, Gwen has a proclivity for analytical thinking and detective work. She is also the daughter of a police captain, thus she knows some police protocols and methods. Musician, Gwen plays the drums with her band, the Mary Janes. Skilled fighter, Gwen is a skilled freestyle fighter. However, she learned most of her moves from kung fu movies. According to Cindy Moon, Gwen does not know how to throw a proper punch. Paraphernalia. Equipment. Web shooters, given to Gwen by Janet Van Dyne. They trap moisture from the air to create a web fluid that allows her to eject web ropes, nets, and globs. Smartphone, Gwen's phone contains her entire life. Ticket to the multiverse, with the help of her Earth-3109 counterpart, Gwen can travel between dimensions with a pendant that is essentially a modified dimensional travel watch that's specifically keyed to her body's unique radiation signature. It can also be worn as a bracelet. Transportation. Travel between dimensions. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/Kayashin. I tend to polls that decide important plot stuff in my P at Trian. Many thanks to my awesome patrons. Ben Phillips.
If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.